Hey everyone, this is Eden Maybon of LightCycleAstrology.com. Welcome back to the channel, friends. Today we are doing Mantic Monday episode number 15, taking a look at the astrology for the week ahead. This is covering the tail end of November and the very beginning of December. The next episode will be us getting into the astrology for December, but I didn't want to skip over the full moon coming through in the sign of Gemini right at the beginning of this week. And a full moon that is coming through a Mercury ruled sign as Mercury goes through a square with Neptune from Sagittarius. So a pretty dynamic and flexible full moon that has this big open quality to it, and is very creative, and a bunch of other things that we'll get into here in a moment. And then at the tail end of the week, we also have, as we get into the very beginning of December, we have Venus forming a square to Pluto. And now both Venus and Pluto are sort of at the edges of the signs that they are in. So there is, the symbolism of Pluto represent transition or transformation that we usually see with Pluto. And it's interesting that this is happening with two planets that are themselves transitioning out of signs. So that is the astrology that we're going to take a look at today on the weekly episode for Mantic Monday, episode number 15. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos, and leave some comments in the comment section. I love to get your guys' stories or reflections. My New Year's resolution is actually to have a deck of flashcards that I write one card for each aspect that I talk about on the channel here, after the aspect has perfected and I've actually experienced the aspect. And that is so I can just sort of have an organized sort of cookbook of aspects, if you will, for myself personally. But, the greatest teacher for how astrology shows up in your life is always just to experience it. But, there's so much astrology that's always happening. It can be overwhelming to try to remember all of the things that happen. There's astrology happening every moment. So it's like, how do you keep track of all of that? But I think it's really great to hear how you guys experience the astrology or the stories that I sometimes get on the channel. And then, of course, for me, it's fun for me to have a look back and see, okay, did I explain the archetypal theme for the moment in a way that was concise and accurate, or was I too vague with the delineation or something like that? So that's going to be my New Year's goal. I'll share those cards with you as I go along, but I think it's going to make me a better astrologer. And archetypal themes or archetypes just in general are kind of elusive, right? They can show up in an unlimited amount of ways. Mars can either represent, like, for instance, conflict or injury as it comes through, or it can represent that you are propelled, moved to act, to do something. You have the will or the motivation to get going into a direction of action, or it's about you being a warrior or something like that. So there are so many different archetypal themes that you could pick for just Mars. And then when you combine them with different planets, of course, it just gets more complicated from there. But astrology should be simple, and it can be. So the idea is to reduce the archetypal themes as elegantly as we possibly can, but also not make it so general that it doesn't land. So that is the goal always with astrology. And as we endeavor to get better practicing astrology, or just seeing the archetypes show up in different ways, you just stick with it and keep practicing. And over time, it's actually extraordinary how your understanding of the archetypes can evolve and change. And it's a little bit like anything, you get better at it the more you practice. But that is going to be my New Year's resolution, is to actually make flashcards for each of the aspects that comes through once I've experienced the perfection of the aspect. Sometimes you don't even feel anything. Sometimes an aspect will go by and you don't notice anything from the aspect. Everything is always coming through your natal birth chart. So if you don't have any issue with, for instance, Mars, if Mars is like in a really good position in your natal birth chart, then as Mars aspects come through, you may not really have that difficult of a time with the aspect. But if Mars is really jacked up in your birth chart and that's your troublesome area, if a really gnarly Mars transit comes through, then it might really throw you off your center or something like that. So anyway, this is a long ramble introduction this time, but we're getting into the astrology of the week. You can always go to lightcycleastrology.com if you want to have me personally ramble on about your birth chart. We can do, if you're new to astrology, we can do like a lay of the land reading for your natal birth chart, just to give you kind of a sense of how everything is laid out, what archetypal themes are at play. Or we can take a look at, like, say, the year ahead transit forecast for you, or we can get into zodiacal periods that are coming online for you in the year ahead, or anything like that. And of course, because the holiday season is coming up, these make great gifts. But if you gift someone a reading from me, just make sure that it's something that they actually want, because some people don't like to get readings from astrologers if they don't like astrology, but they do make great gifts. It's a very unique gift to get somebody, and I know how difficult it is to continually try to figure out what gifts to get people year after year. So readings make great gifts. Okay, thanks for letting me plug that. Now let's get into the real-time clock here. We'll pull up the beginning of the week as it is coming through today. We have the full moon in Gemini right around the beginning of Gemini at 4 degrees, opposing the sun at 4 degrees. So we have that full moon aspect coming through between the sun and the moon that makes the full moon every month. And of course, the important thing here is that this full moon, which comes through right around 9 a.m. GMT time, is happening in the sign of Gemini. And then if we roll the real-time clock forward to right around 1 p.m., we are going to get a perfected aspect between Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, to Neptune. So this square between Mercury and Neptune is coming through. And then it takes a couple of days, maybe Wednesday, Mercury finally moves out of the engagement range to Neptune. The full moon, is past and moves on into Cancer here. So if we go forward a few days, there goes the moon into Cancer. And then we also get Mercury heading towards the last few degrees of Sagittarius. Now, remember, Mercury is debilitated in Sagittarius, and that's because Mercury is in the opposite sign to Gemini, his temple. So it's rather like if you're at home, it's like how far away could you get into an environment that is so opposite to your natural place of dwelling that it's as if you couldn't be in a more different place to your own nature, so to speak. So Mercury in Sagittarius is dynamic and really there are some good qualities to it, but there are also some difficulties. And so one of the things that's really interesting is when you have a debilitated Mercury that is already struggling a little bit to be cohesive or to analyze things in a way that isn't too overwhelming or blown out, and having a square with Neptune, a god that often brings, kind of a haze, is I don't know about you guys, but I have been losing little things left and right since Mercury has gone into Sagittarius. And normally I'm pretty good about not losing my little things. We all have these little things like the car keys and the wallet. And when you take your card out of the wallet to pay for something, do you put it back? When you get home, do you have a place for your keys and your wallet and all of those types of things? For me, normally I don't have a problem with that. I'm pretty organized, and I also am pretty good at, if I do put something in a weird place, I can sort of go backwards in time in my mind, and it takes some effort, but I can sort of go, okay, now I remember where it might be, and then usually I get that right. With Mercury in Sagittarius, that ability for me has just been obliterated. If 10 minutes could go by and I have no clue where my car keys are, and it's just like, whoa, into the black memory hole it goes. So we have this full moon coming through today on Monday, and it is sort of waning as the first few days go in to the week here. But what's happening is Mercury just in Sagittarius alone is already kind of like that Mercury square Neptune, but Mercury is heading towards Capricorn where mercurial things will improve once Mercury gets out of this sign of detriment that it is in, and it moves away from the square for Neptune and all of that. But that's sort of the energy of the week, is these two aspects that are wrapping up as we come through here. Now let's get into some of the archetypal dynamics of the week here. On Monday, we get that full moon coming through in the sign of Gemini, being hosted by Mercury going through a square with Neptune that perfects a few hours after the full moon comes through. So, of course, a full moon in Gemini, these are going to be very creative, very curious, very open and busy, energetically feeling moments as the full moon comes through with this square with Mercury to Neptune, because there is this sense that, you know, you have the sun in Sagittarius and the sun wants to do everything big. And so when you talk about a Gemini full moon, it's always about the tension being held by the sun and the moon being in opposite signs. And the sun wants to do everything really, really big. The sun wants essentially the light to return and come back because it's anticipating the winter solstice moment where the sun begins to rise from its lowest declination in the year. So Sagittarius is in that hedonistic darkness, but is anticipating very hopefully and in a big way, is very enthusiastic about things being brought back together, the light returning and forming a sense of cohesion. So everything is done in a big way with Sagittarius. But the full moon is very busy and active. It wants to talk to all of the people it considers family or people in the local environment, right? The moon was said to have her joy in the third house, a place that is associated with the local environment. And that's because the moon is always circumambulating the earth. It always is keeping an eye on everything that's happening. In the ancient world, the moon was associated with the mercantile class that was going out into the local markets and selling wares and trades and things like that. So the moon having that busy activity of always keeping an eye out, always returning, being about the local environment, culminating and becoming full in a sign that is Mercury ruled, a god that is going back and forth and also has an association with markets. You really get the sense this is a really busy full moon. There's a lot of talking, there's a lot of communicating, there's a lot of letters and conversations, and maybe we're beginning our Christmas card list and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe we're beginning to shop. And so you get this sense with the Mercury going through a square with Neptune also that it's like you're at the Target buying Christmas presents and you're in there for 3 hours because you're talking to everybody. There's a sense of like unity and everybody's coming together over, the holidays or something like that. That is in the air very much this week. Now, one thing that can happen though is you can get to a place where you're just mentally overloaded. And of course, when Neptune is involved, we get things like escapism. So this could be a few days here where, and I think actually I've already really been noticing this as this aspect has been building between Mercury and Neptune, that the go-to that you have to open up the escape hatch and just check out of reality for a while, whatever that go-to is, whether that's, just hanging out at home with the family and having a good time, watching something on Netflix for 9 hours, or going and socializing with friends and just enjoying life and having cocktails, whatever, shopping, just being by yourself and reading, or whatever that looks like to you, maybe hiking by yourself or something. The go-to escape hatch is very like at the fingertips if there is a sense of becoming overwhelmed by the busyness, by the sense that there's a haze in the air, and it just seems like the right time to check out. And it reminds me very much of that Christmas song. What is it? That song that says, we'll have to muddle through somehow. It's Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Sorry, I couldn't remember the song. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And he says in there, have yourself a merry little Christmas. let the Yuletide be gay. What is it? From now on, our troubles are miles away. That's the sense that song, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Those few first verses where he talks about there's problems, but just don't think about them right now. Just enjoy the holidays and the magic of the season. That nostalgic quality is very much in the air, where we can very much try to sweep the more mundane, practical things under the rug so that we can just enjoy ourselves. That escape hatch is just ready right there at the fingertips. And whatever your go-to escape is, whether that's food or alcohol or socialization or shopping or TV binging or whatever it might be, you're likely to go there. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But of course, the age-old wisdom is always everything in moderation, and this isn't a moderate kind of time. This is like a Sagittarius go big kind of time. So you can sort of see that there is definitely the propensity to spend too much money, to drink too much, to, and just indulge too much, like go a little bit too far, eat too much food and stuff like that. So that is one shadow side of this aspect for the week. You can get overwhelmed, you can feel mentally overloaded, and this can actually lead to feeling mentally unstable or confused at times. And of course, Mercury square Neptune aspects can bring in deception or lies or deceit or trouble with honesty. So it's like, buying something really expensive and hiding it from, your partner or something like that. And it just feels like that's what you want to do for yourself right now. Or maybe you're even doing it for somebody else and they wouldn't approve, but you did it anyway because you really want to get them something wonderful for the holidays or something like that. Those archetypal things are hanging in the air until both the full moon sort of fades out along with the Mercury square Neptune aspect. And then by the time we get to Friday, we're going to get a changeover of Mercury entering a new sign, which is going to be, I think, is going to be a lot more practical and useful for Mercury types of things, because this is quite a major transition for Mercury. I'm really curious to see what Mercury is like in Capricorn after freshly experiencing Mercury in Sagittarius, because like I said, I've been losing all kinds of things. I've lost my keys, I've lost my wallet, I wanted to wear a hat and I can't find my hat. I've lost one of the earbuds and my earbud set. I mean, you name it, like holy mackerel. I have been terrible at keeping track of little things this Mercury in Sagittarius last couple of weeks here. But that changes on Friday when Mercury enters Capricorn. Around 3 p.m., Mercury moves out of the sign of detriment, gains degree-based reception with Mercury's host Saturn in the sign of Pisces, and Saturn has recently stationed and turned direct. So Saturn is improving in terms of its directional mode and is providing some degree-based support back to Mercury, one of Saturn's guests. So that's really good, right? Mercury has visibility to its host. The host is not in bad condition. Actually, the host also has reception to its host, Jupiter in Taurus. So this is basically a Mercury that has very much improved. But there are some really cool qualities with Mercury in the sign of Capricorn. One of the things that I want to hone in on for Mercury in Capricorn is that one of Mercury's significations from the ancient world was that Mercury is a god very fluid that can go between boundaries or go in and out of the underworld. We get that symbolism because Mercury is orbiting closest to the sun out of all the other planets, and Mercury was constantly viewed by ancient astrologers as being visible and invisible. It never gets that far away from the sun. It's not like the other planets where it's like way far away from the sun and maybe on the other side of the zodiac from the sun or something. It's always within, a sign of the sun. And so it's like it hangs around the sun, but it's always going in and out of visibility, where the sun is too bright for it once Mercury gets close enough to it, and then it'll pop out on the other side and become visible. So it goes in and out of being an evening star and a morning star, and there are always these periods that it goes through invisibility and then visibility. And that quality of rapidly going in and out, and or often going in and out of visibility, gave Mercury the mythological, archetypal quality of being a god that was capable of going in and out of the underworld. Because the visible thing, it's like, if you're visible, it's like you're here and you exist. If you're invisible, you don't exist, right? It's kind of like you're somewhere else. You're in another realm or dimension. So that quality of often and rapidly going in and out of visibility gave Mercury this recognition as, hey, this god is really capable and flexible. He goes between boundaries. He is somebody that doesn't take a hard stance and is just doing one thing a lot of the time. He's doing all kinds of things. He's capable of going in and out of a realm that other gods aren't. So that is a really, really dynamic thing for Mercury, because if Mercury is now in a Saturn sign, after moving into Capricorn, Saturn is like the opposite, right? Saturn is like, I'm going to hold this thing forever. Saturn was a god that was associated with time and the world. It's like the endless world that has always been, the earth that never, it doesn't often change. One of the most unsettling things I've ever felt is an earthquake, because you depend on that ground to be solid and not moving. It's always like that. That's Saturn. So you get some real dynamic situations going on with Mercury in Capricorn, because you have a planet that is extremely flexible and fluid, capable of going between factions or boundaries. And then you have another planet that likes to hold boundaries. I don't know if Saturn, you could say Saturn creates the boundaries, but Saturn certainly holds and recognizes the factions, right? It says there is this group of people over here and they are like that. There is this thing over here and it is like that. There is night and there is day, and day and night don't, merge. They are two things and they deserve their own, their own qualities, and they're separate. Remember, Saturn was exalted in the sign of Libra, and Libra holds, right, the balance of two opposite things. So Saturn was said to be a god of the opposition. The opposition was said to be of the nature of Saturn. So now that Mercury is in a Saturn-ruled sign, this is really interesting. First of all, you could think of like mercurial things becoming more frugal. So this might help out with having Mercury gone through Sagittarius and maybe spending a bit too much money. This might be where it's like, okay, we've gone back to the checkbook. We're in control again with the money. We're going to itemize everything and keep track of everything and penny pinch and save and be really good about all of that kind of stuff. That could be a positive, right? But we also get such things as like strong business acumen, right? This is a Mercury that is shrewdly clever, resourceful, mentally determined, and also quite imaginative. Saturn can be really imaginative, because Saturn was a god that was the last visible planet in the ancient world. He sat way out there. He saw everything. He saw deep, deep, deep beyond the solar system, out into the vast beyond. So there's this existential vastness to Saturn. So with Mercury and Saturn sign, there could be that quality of the mind just being able to go forever and being very imaginative. J.R.R. Tolkien, who created The Lord of the Rings, created this entire world in his imagination. And he created an entire language based off the Finnish language. Who does that, right? That's, talk about Mercury in Capricorn. Wow. I don't know if he had Mercury in Capricorn, but I'm just saying, like, somebody that can create an entire language. I don't even have time to fully learn a language, and I've tried a bunch of times. This man was, was he at Cambridge, I think? He was working full time as a professor, creating the greatest fantasy trilogy of all time, and to round out the innovation he was working on, he had to create an entire language. So that's Mercury in Capricorn. Very shrewd, very clever, very resourceful, very determined, but also incredibly imaginative. The imagination just is vast. But of course, if you know any Capricorn people, Capricorns can often be quiet or hold their emotions back. So this might be a Mercury that doesn't say a lot, is more quiet or reflective, maybe is slow to speak or slow to think, which isn't bad, but it may keep things to itself. We're going to feel a lot more grounded, a lot more capable, a lot more mentally just astute and aware. And I think that Mercury, this fluidity that Mercury has to go between all of the boundaries and the factions, when being in Saturn's sign, it's going to be almost like a what's that phrase where you rub elbows or hobnob? Mercury is like a hobnobber. Mercury goes at a party, goes over to this little delegation that's in the corner, and they're like, they're this party in the Congress or whatever, and then it goes over and talks to this lobby group and then this lobby group, and it just gets it just is mingling and hobnobbing with all of the different factions. Might bring messages or communications between parties. So this could be a time where you get a lot of business done. You're able to run to the bank and bring what the bank wants to the notary and bring what the notary wants to the court, or something like that. It might be a time where it's really easy for you just to go between all of the different places and carry things and messages and information back and forth, and it's sort of has the ability to get things done like that. So I like that for Mercury entering the sign of Capricorn. Now, the last thing that is coming through right at the tail end of the week, we have Venus making a square to Pluto. So this is also a really interesting aspect for the week. Now, by this time, we're already in the beginning of December. This is December 3rd that this comes through. And then we have Venus still in her own domicile, but at the tail end of Libra here. So we're talking about a Venus that is in her domicile, but for not very much longer. What does that mean when a planet is at home, but it's preparing to leave? It only has a few more days before it leaves. It reminds me of somebody that, yes, has the dignity of being at home. They know where all of their stuff is, but maybe there's kind of this chaotic transition where you're at home, but you're preparing to leave. So Venus, the goddess of love, is love somehow preparing to transition or leave? That's an interesting concept. But right now, Venus is forming a square to Pluto. So there's something intense about Venus's upcoming move. It's like she's moving out, and it's kind of intense. For me, I mean, that just reminds me of when I've left relationships and I've had to move out. There's that real intensity around it. So I'm not saying that this is going to cause everybody to break up and you're going to move out or anything like that, but there is something intense that Venus is going through clearly with this square to Pluto. There could be themes around the optics of fairness, control, or power. Pluto often is associated with power struggles, and especially in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign that is often associated with trying to maintain power or control itself. We have Venus still in the last few degrees of Libra, a sign that is associated with fairness, justice, balance, harmony, harmonizing things between factions and stuff like that. So you get the sense that it's like, it almost reminds me of a presidential candidacy where there are people that are on the campaign trail, and it's like they hold power, or they would like to hold power, right? They would like to be president and hold the reins of power, as it were, but they have to look good, right? It can't just be like, okay, there's this really powerful, magnetic, in control political figure that is going to get in there and hammer away and just do the hard things and get stuff done. That's not enough. They have to look good doing it. Power has to look presentable. It can't be ugly. That's, I feel like, what this square is all about. There is a transition. There are transitions of Venus and Pluto out of signs. So something is transitioning, and that could be speaking to transitions that are intense and have an intense quality around them. Maybe there's a nostalgia that can't be held any longer and we have to move on. Maybe there is a deep melancholy around things of the past that we love, that we would like to classically just keep, but time is marching on and we're having to let go of that. But that's one way that I think that this could be representing the 4 or 5 days as this aspect comes through. But the other way is that control, power, fairness, all of that has to look good. There has to be an aesthetic quality to it. So if somebody is wielding power or control, there could be judgment as to, does this person do it with grace, right? Or fairness? Is it just? It's not enough that somebody holds the reins of power, because there has to be somebody holding the reins of power, right? Somebody has to be in charge of stuff. Whether it's a boss or whether it's a corporation or whether it's a government or what have you, though we may wish that it wasn't that way, that's Pluto in Capricorn. That is the way it is, and that's the way it's always been, right? There always has been somebody in those positions of power. But right now with Venus in square to Pluto, we want that entity or person or situation to look good. It has to have good optics. It has to be presentable. It has to have grace in wielding the power or control. If it has that, then it's like, hey, there's no problem. This is a good situation, I think. But that could be us as well, right? If this could be a moment where potentially we fall upon judgment by other people with our own power or authority, or if we are seen to covet, want, chase after, or try to gain control or power. It might be that we do so in a way that isn't as graceful, because Venus is about to leave Libra. So there's kind of this transition of dignity there. So that could be one potential challenge. And of course, this is a square, and squares can be challenging. So now, of course, we do get the more broad, general, usual description of Venus square Pluto as maybe an intensification around desire, around things that we want or things that we find beautiful. It can be about being obsessed about something a lot that we want and we can't let go of it. Things like that are always potential qualities for Venus square Pluto. But I really think that the key here is that Venus and Pluto are both transitioning out of the signs that they are in. Venus is about to lose dignity and move into a Mars-ruled sign. So you do get the sense that transition comes with an intensity to it. And it's rather like if you're at home, but you have to pack up all your things and move, that's intense. That's overwhelming, right? Even if it's a move that you want to make, or even if it's a move that will improve your situation, there still is that kind of intenseness around breaking everything down and packing everything. And it's just, there's tenseness in the air. So it could have that kind of tenseness to it. So that is the week here for Mantic Monday episode number 15. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Next Mantic Monday episode, we'll be taking a look at more astrology for the month of December as we get into a new month here. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.